And we are live. JT here. Welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you. Whether you are joining us live as we stream into our Facebook community, whether you are watching the replay on YouTube or on Facebook, or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge is to you is to go all in on this conversation. Remove any distractions and get laser focused on this conversation. And my guarantee to you is you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sports, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. We've known each other for a few years, and we reconnected probably about a year ago. It was actually one of our former classmates and teammates that actually said, hey, you need to get connected with Dan, and you guys got a lot in common. So
interesting. Who is that, JT?
Matt Gienta.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I'll have to send him a special thank you.
My guest in the huddle today is the generational program manager with Equip Leadership Canada. He's also doing some great work with Guelph Griffin football, and more importantly, just an amazing human being who just every time I talk with him, just offers a different perspective, encourages me to think and reflect deeper, but more importantly, just causes me to just shift my perspective on the world. My guest in the huddle today is Dan Rossi. How are you today, brother?
Yeah, doing really well. That was a very gracious introduction, so thank you.
You're welcome. And, I think it's just an interesting reminder just to take a moment just to acknowledge people for how they're choosing to show up in the world.
It's true. There is a value of celebrating the things that we want to measure. And as much as it's an honor to be here with me, the journey that you and I have gone through in our reconnection has just been immensely beneficial in terms of entering into the arenas of vulnerability. And I've appreciated that just in, the thoughts that will pass your mind's landscape and how you reach out, and then the conversations that we've had. So it's really a place of honor and privilege that I'm joining you today.
Thank you, brother. I received that. And it just reminds me that the importance of counting your blessings. And I know I've shared this with you in the past, it's a daily practice. Some days you knock it out of the park, other days, just room for growth. But I'm a firm believer that the biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So I'd just like to thank you again for choosing to invest some of your time and energy into being here with me and our community today, and just being open to sharing your journey to greatness.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. So one of the first things I like to do in the huddle is always remind people that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. So I'm curious, what is an interesting fact? I had one coaching colleague that used to say that we all have our quirks. We all have these things that make us different, unique. I'm curious, what's a interesting fact, a quirk, maybe a lot of people don't know about you that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
Just one?
One.
That's tough because I have a couple that are just, they're grand slams. And unfortunately, people do know some of these things about me, because the way that my wife and I have lived our lives, we're very invitational. So we've had people living with us since we've been married. So as much as I'd like to think they're secrets, they're not. I'll go with maybe a safe one. I really, really enjoy dancing. And I actually think I'm a fairly good dancer. I can say that I studied dancing for 5 years, actually through high school. And I will just rip it up in our house during Friday night dance party nights. And unfortunately, the quirk is this: I have to admit that I'm not as good of a dancer as my wife. And I also had to admit that that's my 2 5.5-year-old boys. So it was immensely humbling. And at the same time, it's something that I love. And it's truly a bit quirky about me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And as you share that, it just reminds me of that idea that the fun of life is really sort of celebrating those quirks, those moments to be silly. And I mean, I say that as someone who, it's something I need to consciously practice, right? Is to have that fun, that joy in the moment, right? And just, it really is where, I don't know, it's just like you detach from things and you just are fully thrust into the here and the now.
Yeah, I would agree. And that there's a contrast there. Because in order for me to live out that quirkiness or, that sense of joy that I actually do feel, and just the rhythm that comes out from this body, whatever that looks like in its manifestations, there's the contrast of why I don't do it in certain circles. And that contrast really surrounds the idea of safety. So with my family, I feel absolutely safe. I'm accepted. I know I belong here. And I can handle their laughs, their jostling, their imitations of data, or my wife's banters of how she truly is better. And it's safe. I mean, in other arenas, I'm going to get in my head. And in my biggest question is, am I going to be accepted? What's this going to look like? And the idea of authenticity and being real are up for debate. So people don't get certain parts of who we all are because we use filters in the game of life.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And I know we're going to dive deeper into it because I know that that's around a lot of what you have dedicated your life to. So I'm curious, brother. We grew up playing sports together, right? So sports has obviously played an important role for you in your life, still is to this day, right? With some of the work you're doing, how you're teaching, your leadership experiences and sharing them with others. I'm curious, what has been the biggest takeaway that you've received from sport and you still find yourself applying to your life today?
It might be a blending of two. And that blending starts off with this idea that in the arena of sport, there's this reality that we experience of falling down, whether that's, a tripping over your feet to something that is a bit more of a misplay. There's this idea of experiential defeat or embarrassment or just really not nailing it. And then there's this also, this opportunity to rise up. And there's a significant dynamic that correlates to every other arena in life. However, in sport, that recovery process could look drastically different. The principles are still transferable. However, in sport, the sense of belonging, unity, the dynamics of teamwork have given me this metaphor that I can come back to no matter when I fall down, and my journey to greatness has been a series of shortcomings and failures and falling down. But this idea of how do I rise up? And both, whether in sport or in life, I haven't done it well. My desire and intention is to do it well, to grow and learn how I can rise up with intentionality, maybe with more emotional intelligence. But it's not an easy thing. So I would say that would be a compilation of two of the biggest things that I've learned from sports that I often will reflect back onto. And just to add in there, the dance of human connectivity that you experience with a team, you can use that in substantial ways in other arenas in life. And it's an emotional intelligence that far, is superior than anything you can be taught. It is more of an experiential journey. And sport has a unique way of just infusing some of those opportunities for people to grow in that area. So that would be it.
I love everything you shared there, Dan. And two things, what I heard from you. One, that law of polarity there, right? Where, the perceived defeat rising up, it's the same coin, it's just different sides of it, right? So I love that you kind of shared it's really in that moment where you have both sides of that coin. But two, what I really heard from you is the power of will, right? And that is one of the things that we as human beings have been blessed with, is that ability to choose your next thought, right? I get to choose whether I stay down on the floor, or two, like you said, I get to choose whether I rise up. And I find like that, empowering people with that idea, that really at the end of the day, that's what you can control in life, right? The ability to choose your next thought. And how giving people permission there, it just reminds them that really is what you can control, and it doesn't matter your circumstances, but you always have that choice. So that's what I really heard from you there.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And I do like the idea that you do have a choice, and that permission is where the dance begins. Because there is no timeline on these things. And we can unpack this question, and this is what I love about you and I. The thing that sticks out, and I'll keep it laser focused for you, is that the permission area of these things is not just a self-introspective question. It's also the extension of the community that we're around. And sport is a significant arena where acceptance and belonging, create a family dynamic. This, I'm a part of something bigger than who I am as an individual. And that there's an attractiveness to that. There's an appeal to that. That idea of permission when you're on the journey of rising up. I would just say, if you are someone that is assisting someone in that journey, the ideas of grace and gentleness and just walking side by side with that person is a gift that you can give. The natural propensities that we have to just want to make someone feel good and say, hey, it's going to be okay. I think we've all lived long enough to know that most times things will be okay, but they might be different. And I can say that just having a football injury where I tore my ACL. So the idea of rising up, it looked different. And when I was able to metaphorically stand on both feet and return to sport, I didn't return to football. So for people that were encouraging, and there's nothing that, I'm indifferent to. This is not me trying to be very particular on language. It's just trying to be conscientious to meeting people where they are. Dan, you're going to go back to football. You can still do it. You haven't lost anything. You have a university. My journey just was something totally different. And there's a reckoning that you go through with that, and a grieving when you leave something that you love and committed a lot of time and effort, energy, blood, sweat, and tears to. You need to honor these things. So it's a very beautiful process. So don't rush it.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a great point. And I love how you talked about that idea of giving permission, because I think one of those things is, as humans, we're sometimes very quick to try to, like you said, soothe, console, comfort. Again, our attentions might be coming from a place of, from the, quote unquote, the right place, but really, are you truly honoring that? Are you really giving people permission just to sort of sit with it and observe it and sort of determine their next steps? And why I love that is I know for me, that's been a daily practice, right? Especially with my own kids, because then that's truly where that idea of unconditional love is, right? Like, just like you said, loving people where they're at, gifting them with some grace and compassion. And it's interesting how just creating that space is truly, I believe, from my experience, one of the things that we crave as humans the most, right? It's just because I think it allows us to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel appreciated.
Yeah, JT, I like that, because most people want to be seen, heard, understood, validated. And more times a response is not what makes things better. What makes things better is a connection. And I absolutely believe that, not just from the field of psychology. I believe it from my experiential moments of walking into these experiences. So I'll just highlight one. And this is when I was a police officer serving in Calgary. There are certain curriculums that do not prepare you for what you experience in the real world, if I can just use that as a metaphor. And this idea of walking into people's worst moments while serving as a police officer was immensely a place of privilege. And the fact that I am here in a capacity to help, and I'm in your worst moments, arguably, of life, there is something that is so broken or so painful, and here I am. And not every situation is going to result in a criminal charge. Some of the hardest situations I dealt with were suicides, where you're sitting with family members, or death of a partner, a lifelong partner. And it's in those moments where this idea of just don't rush it, and sitting in the presence of a complete stranger, and you're there for a number of professional and legal reasons. What do you say in those spaces? And in the quietness, quietness for two reasons. One, I was scared. Two, I truly didn't know what to say. But there's something said about quietness that opens up connectivity. Empathy can be communicated in a bunch of different ways. And it's amazing to me that in some people's worst moments, where I just would not want to perceive what that could look like in my life, I heard some beautiful stories and some real difficult things where, I'm glad I did. And I'm sharing all of that to just highlight one extreme, and just what we were talking about before. It's going to look different. You can't really rush it.
As you share that, it just, an idea that came on the screen of my mind is that idea of the power of being, right? And we all live in a world where we're led to believe it's the power of doing. But as you so beautifully highlighted there, often your power comes from your ability to just sit and to be. Mm-hmm. And what I love from your lived experiences, you have come from some of what I can only imagine are the most challenging situations, right? Like, you come from a background of policing, of military, and these are some of the most, again, challenging environments, things that I can only imagine some of the things you've seen, that you've had to experience. And they're just being able to offer this grace, this permission, this safe space. I'm sort of inspired by that. So I guess my question is, has this been a skill you've always had? Is it something that, someone taught you, or is it just really like, where did this ability to be, to listen, to be compassionate and patient with others, where did that come from?
I'm glad that you framed it in the positive. Its beginnings, I'll start there, was from a framework that I adopted when I was quite young. And that framework has been something I've used through my whole life. It's worked for me, so I'm not describing this as this is what you need to do. This is just me sharing my journey. And it goes back to the inspiration I drew from Jesus, his life, teachings, and example of leadership, the dynamics of how he showed compassion, And there is a famous story in Matthew 9:36 that says that he looked at the crowds and had compassion on them. And as a young person of the age of 11, 12, that I was just fascinated with this idea. And what I didn't know at the time was this would be a framework for how I made life decisions. So I was never really worried about what am I going to do in life. I was always more concerned with, well, how am I going to have the biggest impact to make a difference? And that journey has looked very different. Military, police, Samaritan's Purse. I was a missionary in Laos for 5 years. So it's looked very different. And there's a large part of me that's okay with that. A lot of transition. It's being drawn to this idea of being able to interact with people and having a potential positive outcome. Now, in that process, to answer your question, there's been a lot of mistakes that I've made where the idea of who I wanted to become went through valleys of trespassing the very values that I wanted to live with. And when I experienced that inconsistency of stated value, kind, compassionate listening, and then the trespass, I mean, that really interrupts your emotional landscape. And it can put you into a state of disintegration within yourself. So it was in those moments of reconciling those valleys of hurting someone else or not listening to a way that honored that person, or making a quick decision in leadership that really didn't consider someone else's perspective. And then being confronted, whatever that looked like, whether that was in my family life or in a professional circle. It's through the experience of failing and having people share grace, a kind response where I thought I would have been disqualified or that I could not return to the relationship in the way that it was. And the person that's done this by far in the most exemplary ways for me is my wife, where, we've all can reflect on a moment where we've made a mistake or a trespass that we think is so bad that the only conception would be punishment or distance or, whatever matrix of restitution and reconciliation you think of. And when someone exercises grace as not just a gift, but as a life practice, there's something so powerful with that. And I love it because I get to do that every day with my two boys. And I get 100 opportunities within a day, thousands within a week, millions within a year to not perfect it, because I'm not looking to be perfect in it, but just to lean into it and try to do it right instead of just trying to be right.
You know what I love about what you're sharing is how, what I heard from you again is that other people, your wife in that example you're sharing, are just mirrors, right? Like they sort of remind you about what could be, right? About what you could demonstrate. And I love how you sort of tied that up there, that, it's coming, there's always opportunities in life, right? We always have the ability to create an opportunity. And like you said, with your boys, you have 100 opportunities a day. And it's great to think about, hey, this is the person I want to be with my family. But it's using one of those 100 opportunities to follow up with an action, right? And that's where I have found that's where the piece of life is, when you can integrate great thought with great action. And right. And I often say this, I had a great mentor who said, act as if, right? Act as if you were already that person. And why that resonates with me, I'll tie that up, is I just started integrating this new habit. So I realized, like, driving my kids to school this year, as I've shared numerous times here, it's been although a simple action, it's been one of the most transformative, healing, and peaceful actions. Because truth be told, coming from parents who were just at a different stage of life, I didn't always have those opportunities with my parents to get driven to school. But I found just that simple action. And now what I'm starting to do is I get out of the car, I offer my kids, a hug. My daughter always takes me up. My soon to be preteen son does not always, but I find just following up that drive with another action, like just offering, hey, have a blessed day. Love you. Proud of you. Would you like a hug? I find like just that's strengthening kind of that who I want to be, right? So that's why that really resonated with me.
Yeah, JT, if you summarize that what you just said, that concept of human connection, because we are wired for connectivity, the sense of acceptance and belonging. We search for it, and it's expressed in different ways in any one particular person's life. That experience that you shared with your children can totally be transformed into the arenas that people play in: hockey, soccer, basketball, volleyball, and even into the individual sport arenas of tennis, rock climbing. And that, I feel, has the capacity to become the biggest measurable component of any one team's internal matrix, if you will. It's not a matter of win-loss. And this is my perspective. So I want to be very careful when you speak passionately and give a disclaimer that I don't exist in the same world that a lot of coaches do. I'm actually not a coach. I've had the privilege of coaching our former high school for a couple of years, but this is not my everyday. So I'm saying this from more of an experiential platform. And I feel as though it's highly transferable. Mm-hmm. And when you can really understand that, the power of connectivity really has an opportunity to give a platform that you can build from. And we're talking the things that we can read on a bulletin board that would reflect our values. You know, we want to be a family. We want to respect each other, honor each other. We need a foundation. And what you were sharing, JT, is, you know, the building blocks of that foundation.
Well, you bring up an interesting idea, and you talked about this idea of like foundations, right? And really, you know, culture is a word that gets thrown around in sport, right? What's the culture of this team? But if you really peel back the layers, what is culture? It's group habit. Peel back habit. What are habits? They are fixed ideas. What is fixed ideas? Ideas that have been repeated over and over and over again. What is the essence of that idea? A thought. So it's interesting how great cultures are built on the foundation of great thoughts. And from my experience, you know, being in the sports world for the last 35 years, is the teams, the coaches, the athletes that have the most clear values are the ones that have the strongest culture. So I agree with you. These are very transferable. And when you have clear values, great culture, it's funny how the results on the field, on the ice, on the court, they take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like that. And I would add that culture it's not a permanent structure. It's changing, and we've all experienced this. You know, we get a new head coach, things are going to change. There is a power dynamic that is connected to that, for sure. You know, with a new person, there's new thoughts, a new regiment. And I think the important thing to remember is that if it remains flexible, and if you allow the idea of mistakes and failures to be a prominent posture within that culture, there's something even different that you can achieve as an organized group of people trying to affect one outcome, whether that's winning in the game of football or winning in the game of life. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think football, and I'm biased, I've only played football, rugby, and so I'm so limited as a human being. Don't get me started. I'm a man, and you know, I'm a Jesus follower. So there's so many limitations that may be applicable to this conversation or maybe not. The idea of failure is something that we talk about and we reference great people with. The challenge with it all, and this kind of connects some other conversations we've had, it's very uncomfortable. So if we can become comfortable with it and even redefine what that looks like within our cultures as permissible, expected, and how are we going to respond, not just as a coaching staff or even as an individual player or the O-line, you know, like you can break it down in any format you want. How are we going to respond really is what matters. Are we going to be punished for our failures? Are we going to have to do extra laps? Are we going to experience a disconnect from our coach? Because that impacts a player's ability to actually perform at the next level. And given that situation, if a failure occurs, whoever's at fault or whoever initiated it, I mean, I would even go beyond having to identify who's at fault in some situations. We could enter into a process of restoring dignity where we can, really just communicate, it's okay to make failures. I'm going to make them. I yelled at you, JT, in a way that really isolated you from the group. I told you to pick it up, that I expected more. And I understand that could have been shaming or made you feel very embarrassed. And you can, come with me because I need to affirm you, not just as a human being, but as a player as well. You have a lot of skill, man. Like, I've seen what you can do. Take 2 minutes, take a couple of deep breaths, and then come back when you're ready. And that transforms culture, if I can connect it that way.
Well, and as you were sharing there, what came up for me is I came back to, can you create that space where risk-taking, failure, whatever human contract you want to say is embraced, right? Like, it's just part of the ebbs and flows of this journey we call life, or a journey of a season, or, part of the human experience. That when you really just unpack that, you start to realize it's just a snapshot in time. That play doesn't define you, right? It is what it is. It really reminded me of a conversation I had a few weeks ago with Alexia Tam, who's an expert in the safe sport space, and how she really shifted my awareness and understanding, because I know sometimes that talking to other coaches, the term safe sport sometimes gives people these connotations of what it is. And when she unpacked it, what she started to realize is you have a choice. Like, what she wants to do, she wants to empower other athletes and coaches to create more diverse, equitable, inclusive environments. And really through that, create connection, authenticity, which I know is a big driver of you. So it's funny how all these things are kind of interwoven, right?
Oh, absolutely. And not easy to play out. Like, we're just such complex human beings, very unique in our individualities and just very complex. But it can be done. And that's the beauty of it. So I applaud my sister. I'll listen to that session that you guys did. I think it's brilliant. And I think that's where I've had the opportunity to play. I mean, I'm using that word, I hope it's not offensive, but just to bring that experiment into the professions that I've served in. And it's gone well, and it's also been very difficult. And what I've learned in the whole process, if I can share this, is that it's allowed me to rediscover my definition of courage. And for me, that's been very important. And you did ask me this question, and this is what I shared. It redefined my definition of courage to be understood through the pathway of vulnerability. And you can appreciate and understand, as a military guy, a police guy, I thought courage was very one-dimensional. Did I have what it took to go into that building and, be able to stand in the line of fire? Could I, push through the feelings of being scared or overwhelmed and, respond to a dangerous situation? And there's still an element of courage in there. But the courage that I think Mrs. Tam was talking about, and what I'm referring to, is this idea of vulnerability. And vulnerability is not about getting it right or getting it wrong. It's actually the courage to show up and just continue the journey and be absolutely real with the people around you, saying, I actually don't know, and I need to hear your feedback. And to me, that's just become the measure of courage in my personal life.
I love that. And what I heard from you again is that showing up who you want to be. And so I guess here's my question is, anytime you present new ways of thinking, new ideas, right? You're going to be met with resistance, right? That's why culture, and like you said, it's malleable. It's in flow. You can constantly create new stuff. I guess based on your lived experience, if you were talking with a coach who is maybe resistant to the idea, okay, like this is great in theory. I have A, B, C, D to do. Where do I even begin? Like, where do I even start to create this culture of connection, authenticity? Because essentially I was brought up in a culture where players play, coaches coach. So what would you say, or what would you offer that person on where to get started?
It's a valuable question. I am not someone that has an expectation that you just move from 0 to 60 within a 24-hour period. That change is immediate and it's intimate. It's a process and it's a journey. There are some great mentors out there. And I can name a few that you can tap into. So then there's an objective third party that can enter into your arena and provide these conversations where it's safe for you as you explore what this looks like. Because the hardest part of this journey is having to reconcile all of this uncomfortable stuff within us. So then you can move to the next level. And if you're willing to take that step of courage as a coach, I guarantee you're going to experience a completely different experience on whatever field you play on and coach through. But it's a lot of work. And that's why I think it's definitely a leap of courage. It's not going to be for everyone. And if you have someone to do it with, there's value in that. And if you want to have some easy, like relieve yourself of this overwhelming, like, how am I going to get there? You can just take comfort in small practical steps. And I know that you have a world of 1 to 3s, JT, that you can help people with. And small steps, I mean, it's cliche, but it's the beginning of 1,000 journey mile. I mean, for someone who's walked across the country, I did not do it in one literal day. It was a series of combined steps. And so is true with life. So you can just start very small. And if I'm going to throw encouragement out there in a coaching dynamic, it would just be, how do you engage in this process of reconciling a disconnection with a player or a group of players? And I'm not advocating that you have to stop yelling, or I would advocate don't use shame as a coaching tool. I don't think that's effective. But if you make a trespass and you feel it and you're like, I think I went a bit too far, you can reconcile that moment and call that person or that group of players together and take 2 minutes out of the practice schedule and reaffirm them as human beings and affirm them in their skill sets. What drew you to recruit them or what put them onto that team? You can affirm these things, and it can still be messy. That's the beautiful part of all of it. Because if we have expectations to be perfect, I mean, gosh, I feel I feel a long time ago. But that's what we were talking about with permission and grace. But I would encourage you to take some small steps. And your book has some really great initial steps that you can take. And again, the world of mentorship is valuable. So yeah.
I love the simplicity of what you share. What I heard from you was, again, this practice of celebrating the wins of others. And one thing I often say, and this is where I love sharing an idea. And sometimes I find the ideas that go against the cultural norms are sometimes the ones that resonate most with people, right? It's like when I share the idea that fake it till you make it is complete BS. Mm-hmm. Or another one I share is, when you learn to celebrate the wins of others as much as your own, you will be free. And why I love sharing that, it reminds people that comparison is a trap, right? And there's so many great quotes around there, but it's amazing what happens when you create a culture where you truly, and I heard you talk about it, is like you truly celebrate people, right? Like you celebrate their gifts, their talents, and their abilities. You let them know you see it in them. And it's just, it's amazing the shift that can happen when you do that, when you consistently practice that, like celebrate them. And the benefit is, it's not just, some people might say, oh, okay, well, that's great in theory. No, it's actually, it's the law, right? It's the impression of increase. It's leaving people better off than when you got there. And it's amazing when you do that consistently, that builds deeper trust, deeper connections. And the funny thing is, do it enough, the wins are going to show up on the scoreboard and in the standings. So
As a byproduct.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if I was coaching right now, my biggest push would be in the arena of life. I think we owe it to each other, just as you said, to help each other grow and to develop and to become a better version of ourselves, or help our communities grow and experience a bit of that harmony that we see when compassion, kindness is infused into that space. And the win-loss, as important as it is, I would submit, should not be your number one measurable. If your measurables are celebrating what encouragement looks like, and this is what I loved about being a leader responsible for people. I mean, our values that we had organizationally, best practices, we would actually break them down and not just write them on paper, say, we want to be an authentic community. What we would do, and it reflected on our performance reviews, was you were evaluated on how you lived out the values of our organization, not how much money you made, or, I was working in anti-trafficking ministries in Laos, not how many women came into our program. It was how well did you respect someone else? And you see it, you celebrate it right away, or, when it comes by your desk in the office, you're going to be intentional to be like, JT, hey man, you were really generous. I heard that you gave your jacket to someone, and that's awesome. And the more you use language and intentionality, that's where the culture can change quite easily. And it doesn't need to be a daunting restructuring. No, it's very slow, intentional steps towards becoming a better arena that is not just a safe place, but a very attractable place for people to want to join. And yeah, there's got to be an equation that equates winning somewhere.
Yeah, it's again, like as you share that, it goes back to the idea where I shared with you earlier. It's thinking and acting as if like it's already done. Like, what if you thought and acted like you already won on the scoreboard, and right? And that allows you to detach from what the arbitrary number is on a scoreboard, in the bank account, right, on your sales sheet, and just focus on the process of what is it that I need to do right now? Who's it I need to be right now? What are the qualities I need to embody and demonstrate right now? And I find, like, when I'm most consistent, and again, it's a daily practice, that's where things just flow, right? Like when I'm more consistent there in the here and the now, life just feels different.
And I think you would be courageous to say your consistency does not mean perfection. Your consistency would be a mix of wanting to try to get it right, as opposed to just being right. I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but knowing you, the difference that I would highlight is that you've learned how to say sorry. And that is very consistent with who you are becoming.
Yeah.
Would you agree or have a different perspective?
110%. The illusion of perfection, I've shared it again here. I had a great coach or mentor business wise that we got off a mastermind. I was crying, right? Like he shared something that totally just hit me between the proverbial eyes. I was crying, he calls me after, and he looks at me dead in the eye. He goes, stop trying to be so effing perfect. And he smiled. I knew he was coming from a place of loving me tough. And he said, could I ask you a question? Yes. Does every football play you call go as planned? No. And he just asked me, so why do you try to do it in your personal life and in your business? He asked me not necessarily what I wanted to hear in the moment, but he asked me a question that I needed to hear. And I find that question that he asked me a year and a half ago on a snowy winter day has been a game changer in my life. I often go back to it. Like I feel so indebted to him for him giving me that grace and compassion to meet me where I was at and just helping me discover the answer for myself. So that was the moment that I started to release this illusion of perfection and embrace imperfection. And it's, like you said, it's been a game changer.
Oh, I believe it. And I haven't been there for all your worst moments, but I believe it because I've experienced it myself.
Yeah.
And you also brought back a part that we shared of a tribe of mentors. And that connection that you had with that person allowed feedback, even though it may have been met with a bit of defensiveness. That relationship was secure and safe enough that there was a transfer of, in that case, a challenge. You know, and there was probably others where there was a transfer of celebration and acknowledgement and affirmation of good job, JT. That was awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, brother. I receive it. I heard a podcast recently, and this was a former NFL player who talked about who had transitioned to another adventure in life. And he shared the idea that borrowed wisdom saves you time and energy and money too. So it's interesting, like when you're open, when the mind's open to learning from people who are achieving results that you desire to, that you might not be there yet, it's funny how that accelerates progress in your life, and actually you can achieve more and with greater ease.
Yeah, we don't live long enough to make all the mistakes to learn from. So yes, borrowed wisdom. I like that.
Yeah. So I'm curious here, and a word came up for me as you were sharing. What relationship does the word trust have in all these? When you're building connection, when you're building authentic and being vulnerable, how important, where does trust factor into it? I'm curious from your lived experience.
Oh man. Well, it's still very much in the processing stage. Trusts. I really like what Jesus said about trust. Trust is given, not earned, which is a complete flip of what most slogans and mantras that we understand and have heard. And I am very much of a trust is given kind of person. Now, there's a caution statement with all that. You still need to guard your heart because you don't want people just to stomp on it and be taken advantage of. So I don't want to give this perception that being a trusting person means that you're a doormat. It's absolutely not. Giving trust is a process. It's a dance. So I will give it. And if there's a trespass, then we reevaluate what that looks like. If someone has to earn it, then we're already starting at a disadvantage where there's going to be a filter process. I'm not going to show you, JT, my authentic self first. And if I go within like the internal landscape, I have lived a significant portion of my life where I just didn't really trust myself. So that had a huge implication on the idea of trust with another person. Mm-hmm. And part of that was I would question if I shared too much. Was I too vulnerable? As you just rumble with ideas or thoughts or change that you want to manifest in your own life. And when I became comfortable with who I was, accepting all of my weakness and limitations, accepting the fact that I have failed and I have hurt people along that process, things that I never would have wanted when I was 20, looking at the long run of turning 40. I've been able to trust a whole lot differently in the past 5 years than I was in the 35 before that. So I don't have an answer, lock key, but I still like this idea that trust is given. And when there is a fracture, it doesn't disqualify you. We just enter into a difficult conversation and we talk about that. And we both have a choice to pursue reconciliation, or if I'm a leader, you're going to put me in a position where you may actually need to leave this team or this organization. But I still like to give people a choice because to me, it just feels like an honoring thing that we can do to another human being. And if you've been in a position where you've experienced disempowerment, that just leaves bitterness and hurt inside of you for a very long time. And some people may even go to the grave with those type of hurt feelings. And listen, I'm saying this because I've had to go back years later and apologize for things that just didn't sit right. So it's not this, model of, listen, if you're going to do this, it's going to be hard, but it's worthwhile, because if it's too easy, I would say that's just not worth doing. So choose the hard road in this situation and maybe reconsider what trust looks like for you.
I love your analogy of how you said trust is given, it's not earned, from your lived experience. And why that resonates with me is this idea of it. To me, it's coming from a place of abundance, right? Like you're going to give people the benefit of the doubt, like you see their greatness in them, right? It's that trust where, we've been programmed to believe that trust is earned. And I feel like it's transactional. You do this for me, then I'll start to trust you. And it just it's tit for tat. And to me, it lands differently, at least from my experience. So I love this idea of trust is given, right? I see the best in you. But like you said, I reserve the right that if that trust is broken, we get to reassess what this looks like moving forward. And again, there's that built-in choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like how you summarize that. And truthfully, if we use our own matrix of what it means to earn my trust, the power dynamic that changes is that I could be more susceptible to pride and self-ideation. These are horrible things within a culture, and we've all experienced it and we're all aware of it cognitively, but that kills culture. It creates disconnect. So if your goal as a coach or a leader organizationally is to create connections, it doesn't mean you have to share everything in your diary. I'm not talking about that level of vulnerability. It's just to admit, like, when you don't know the answer, to feel comfortable enough to say, I actually don't know. I need to hear, guys, what ideas you're rumbling with. It changes the game. But if people need to earn whatever matrix that you're probably not going to establish in a model for people to understand, if I do this, this, and this, I'm going to earn JT's trust. Yeah, there's something to be really considered in that phrase, and even how we approach that component of life.
So I'm curious on your idea with the trust. I love how, it's often said in personal growth and self-development. And cognitively, I understood this for many years, but subconsciously, it was a word. It took me a little bit of time to truly understand it. That other people are simply a mirror of you. So if you give trust, then what you're sharing with that person is you are someone that I can trust. So then they reciprocate back by trusting you. So I'm curious, what is your idea around this idea of trust and that other people? So if you're trustful, then people will reciprocate. If you're distrustful, then people just won't trust you. I'm kind of curious on your idea around that.
So if I'm trustful, people might reciprocate that. And if there's an issue of not being trustworthy, then that might get reciprocated as well.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I'll reframe. That's where these ideas. So if you are trusting of people, then people will trust you. If you are distrustful of others, then people will be distrustful back to you. And it's simply, you're just mirroring other people. You just sort of mirrored back what you're putting out in the world. So
yes. Okay. No, I get that. Oh man. And I've explored the whole spectrum of it, from wanting to try to control the outcome or the response of that person. Okay. Very dangerous. Manipulation, power, control. I mean, don't do that. Okay. And when you do, acknowledge that those were your motives. Okay. True, genuine relationship, people they sense it. And when it takes place, it's so authentic and real. You can identify anything that is disingenuous right away. You would know. If I was making up a strategic way to build relationship with you, JT, you would know that, and it would impact how we would connect, or maybe we wouldn't connect. And the same way is true for a player-coach relationship, a boss-employee. I mean, it exists. So if you make it strategic because you've read a good book, there's a danger component to that. If you're able to like journey and come to peace with the beautiful mess that you are, accepting, you know, the uncomfortable negative emotions of like failure, and like, yeah, you know what, I have not done this really well and I want to do it better. People will respond to that 100% more. And that is what attracts me to want to be in a mentor relationship, to play for a coach harder. You know, I experienced that when we were playing for Terry Lyons. It's those things that it just spews authenticity, and it revives and inspires a part of our souls. And that is contagious. So with trust, I've had to release this idea that I can control the outcome. And at the end of the day, I live with myself. And if my conscience is clear, I'm actually really happy with that. And even if that resulted in someone stepping on my heart or taking advantage, I can recover from that if I lived in that moment the way that I want to live from a holistic lifespan. That's where I want to arrive to. I mean, that's the journey I want to be on, because I don't think I'll ever arrive. That's the journey I want to be on.
Okay. And I love what you shared, and I love a couple of things jumped out to me as you're talking about, like the intention, right? So what is your intention from this question, this action, right? Is it truly to love on people, right? So I love that. That's great food for thought. And the other thing that I really, and what I've come to learn is, like you said, people can always get a sense, like you're always making people feel something, you know, and people that have done the work, that are more self-aware, right? They can feel it, and it's like that spidey sense goes off, right? So it's always really important to understand what the intention is, because they're going to be feeling it. Even if they don't know it, it's gonna kind of, their spidey sense is going to go off, and they're just going to feel a little icky about it. I think we've all been there. But I think we've also had it before with someone who's truly pouring into us, and it just feels good, right? Because you feel like this person is completely just interested in you and getting to know you. So I love that. And I'll sum it up by saying that's intuition. It's a higher conscious faculty. So I love it.
That was easy.
So good.
Or it's truly the measure of greatness. How much you give away. And I like that. I had the privilege of having Mike Pinball Clemens come and share just at one of our practices. It was our training the other day. And that was, I mean, he said a lot of good things, but I think that was the thing that I identified with the most. And it's that servant leadership perspective. And we shared that my inspiration was first, you know, in my mind's eye from Jesus. And Pinball was able just to share with these young athletes, like, it's how much you give away. And I love what you said at the beginning. It's time, it's who you are as a relational human being to another person that walks this earth. It doesn't have to be constricted to finances, you know, reputation. It is a significant measure of that journey towards greatness, if I'm going to use your words. I don't think I'll ever arrive there, JT, but I'm certainly on a journey.
So I'm curious, brother. I want to be respectful of your time and energy. I have one last question for you. Let's say that you have King Midas's touch, right? Like everything you touch turns to gold. Yes, it's filled with both ebbs and flows. What are you in the process of helping to create in this world? Like, what would you like to see happen? Like in terms of serving your life purpose, serving the hearts of others, and just making this world a better place. Like, I'm curious, what's on your heart, brother?
Well, that's big, man. Oh, well, it's truly, Okay, well, it's not selfish. It stems from the way I walk this earth as a man, as a husband, and as a father. So it starts in that trifecta of the reality that is me. And my goal is really a summation of what we're talking about. I want to become a safer person where my children feel that they can connect with me. And I've experienced disconnection with them, and it's absolutely horrible. And there's no positive outcome until I'm humble enough to just say, you know what, Dad, I raised my voice, kiddo, and I shouldn't have done that. And it still doesn't mean that what they did to instigate my response is not going to go, without a conversation. It's that reestablishment of connection that I just want to be a lot more sensitive to, not just in my personal life, but as I walk this earth in whatever roles I get to serve in. And if we're going to go bigger, then yeah, I'd love to have conversations like this in the arenas or the areas of life where they really need to be had, and to do it in a way it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but I think we can do it in a safe environment with a safe context. So then we can really, go on this journey collectively. And that's kind of what I would leave you with.
I love it, brother. I love your openness, your willingness to be vulnerable. Just on a side note, I had the same moment with my son this morning where I was feeling a little frustrated about something else. And then on the car ride, I apologized and said, that's not a you problem. That's a me. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's amazing how freeing that is and how powerful that lesson can be for your kids.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if this resonated with anyone. And again, I know you definitely gave me a ton of food for thought. How can people connect with you, learn more about what you're helping to grow? What's the best way?
Well, I mean, if there's an insecurity part of me to say, well, thank you. And that's honorable. If you feel some of this stuff stuck and you want to dialogue more about it, you can throw my website in the link. I serve with an organization called Equip Leadership Canada. Yeah. And JT, you can use my email that will give people an entry point to questions or even comments. I am on a journey, so consider that in the things that we shared today, and willing to learn as much as excited to explore and discover.
I love that. And I'll be sure to share those details in the description on Facebook, on YouTube, on the podcast, and share that with people. So I definitely know you gave some food for thought. So Dan, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the man you are, the great husband, the great dad, the great son, the great coach and mentor, but more importantly, the great human being you are. The one thing that I've been constantly inspired by from our conversations is just the level of grace and compassion that you give others. The reason it's so powerful, and a reminder to me, is it allows you to create authentic connections, and it gives people permission to be vulnerable, to open up their hearts. So I just want to acknowledge you for that, because that's a gift. And I'm just so enthused to see how many more people you can bless moving forward.
Well, thank God for those gifts, man. I do receive it, and thank you. Those words land very softly on my heart, and you're very kind, JT, in how you're able to summarize and just celebrate someone else. So I do receive that. Thank you.
So, folks, Dan shared so many valuable nuggets of wisdom. But as I remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates great results. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it in your life today. And as I remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations is, if it resonates with you, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, someone in your life that needs to hear this wisdom. The reason is, the more people we have understanding these simple ideas and applying in their life, the more you'll be able to shine your light, and the more lights will be able to shine of other people. I look forward to chatting with you next time in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.